Electrolysis corrosion. Why mixing metal types on your roof causes failure. I pulled this corroded screw out of a roof in Monmouth County last week. Brand new roof, 2 years old, and it already had problems. The homeowner had no idea this was happening because it was all happening underneath. Your roof could be quietly corroding right now, even if it looks perfect from the street. This invisible chemical reaction is destroying fasteners, flashing, and panels beneath the surface, and most roofers never check for it until the damage is done. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what electrolysis corrosion is, how to spot the warning signs, and most importantly, how to make sure your roof is installed correctly so this never happens to your home. Here's the thing. You can spend $15,000, $20,000, even $30,000 on a new roof, and if the installer mixed the wrong metals during the job, that roof is already on a fast track to failure. Fasteners are weakening. Flashing is thinning, and by the time you see a leak, the damage has already spread. This isn't some rare freak occurrence. This is happening all over New Jersey and Pennsylvania, anywhere moisture and mixed metals come together. And if you don't know what to look for, you're flying blind. What electrolysis corrosion actually is, and why rainwater is the trigger. Electrolysis corrosion, also called galvanic corrosion, happens when two different types of metal are used together on a roof and come into contact in the presence of moisture. Here's the key thing to understand. Rainwater isn't neutral. When it hits your roof, it acts as an electrolyte, which is just a fancy way of saying it conducts electricity between metals. When that happens, one metal becomes the anode and the other becomes the cathode. The anode, the less noble metal, starts giving up electrons to the cathode, and as it does, it corrodes fast. Think of it like a battery. In a battery, you have two different metals and an electrolyte solution, and that creates a flow of electricity. On your roof, you've got the exact same setup, except instead of powering a flashlight, it's eating away at your fasteners and flashing. This means that even if both metals are high quality on their own, when you put them together in a wet environment, one of them is going to sacrifice itself to protect the other. And on a roof, that sacrifice shows up as rust, pitting, thinning, and eventual failure. If you're getting a roof installed or repaired, you need to know what metals are going on your roof, not just the shingles. One wrong pairing and you've started a reaction that won't stop until something fails. And when it does fail, it's not going to be a slow, manageable problem. It's going to be water in your attic, damaged sheathing, and a repair bill that's much more expensive than what prevention would have cost. The most common and most dangerous metal combinations on roofs. According to the Galvanic series of metals and seawater, which engineers use to predict corrosion, copper is one of the most noble metals, meaning it resists corrosion best. Steel and galvanized metals, on the other hand, are much less noble. When they're paired together in the presence of moisture, the steel corrodes rapidly while the copper stays intact. This is why mixing these materials without proper isolation is considered a critical installation error in the roofing industry. The most common problem I see, copper flashing or copper gutters paired with galvanized steel or aluminum roofing components. With copper being a more noble metal, it resists corrosion really well. Steel, aluminum, and galvanized metal, not so much. So when copper runoff, that's rainwater that's touched copper, flows over steel fasteners or aluminum flashing, those less noble metals start corroding almost immediately. Another dangerous pairing, zinc-coated fasteners with bare steel panels, or stainless steel screws with galvanized metal. Even small mismatches can trigger corrosion over time. Here's what this looks like in real life. I was on a roof in Red Bank a few months ago where the homeowner had paid for premium copper gutters. Beautiful work, but the roofer used standard galvanized steel nails to secure the flashing underneath. Within 3 years, those nails had rusted through. The flashing had pulled loose, and water was getting into the sheathing. The copper looked perfect. Everything else was falling apart. This is why you can't just assume that metal is metal. Every fastener, every piece of flashing, every trim piece has to be chemically compatible with everything it touches. If it's not, moisture will find it and corrosion will start. And once it does, it's not like you can just wait it out. The reaction accelerates. One corroded fastener weakens the seal around it, which lets in more water, which corrodes the next fastener, which creates a bigger gap. It's a cascading failure. If you're planning any roof work, even just replacing flashing or adding gutters, you need to ask your contractor one specific question. What metals are you using? And are they compatible with what's already on my roof? If they don't have an immediate, confident answer, that's a red flag, because this isn't advanced knowledge. This is basic material science. Any professional roofer should know the Galvanic series and should be specifying materials that won't react with each other. Why this problem is so dangerous. It starts where you can't see it. Electrolysis corrosion doesn't announce itself. There's no visible rust on the surface, no obvious staining, no shingles flapping in the wind. What's happening is underground, so to speak. Fasteners are corroding beneath the roof material. Flashing is thinning out where it is hidden, and by the time you see a water stain on your ceiling, that fastener has already been compromised for months, maybe years. I see this all the time during inspections. A homeowner calls me because they've got a small leak. I get up there, pull back the material in that area, and find a row of screws that have rusted down to nothing. The heads are still there, but the shafts are gone. The roof was literally just sitting there, held in place by friction. And here's the thing, once corrosion starts, it spreads. One corroded fastener creates a gap. That gap lets in more water. More water accelerates the corrosion on nearby fasteners. It's a cascading failure. By the time you notice the first symptom, a water stain, a drip, a damp spot in the attic, you're not dealing with one bad fastener, you're dealing with an entire section that's been quietly deteriorating for years. The worst part? Most homeowners have no idea this is even a risk. They assume that if the roof looks fine and there's no leak, everything's good. But what they don't realize is that electrolysis corrosion can be silently weakening their entire system. And the first sign of trouble might be a major failure during a storm. That's when you get the call. We had heavy rain last night, and now there's water pouring into the bedroom. And when I get up there, it's not one small problem. It's structural damage, soaked insulation, and compromised sheathing. All because a handful of fasteners corroded out and nobody knew to check. This is why I always tell people, if your roof is more than 10 years old, or if you've had any repairs or upgrades done by someone you didn't personally vet, you need to have a professional get up there and check the fasteners and flashing. Not just look at the shingles, actually inspect the metals. You can't see this problem from the ground. You can't catch it with a drone photo. Someone needs to physically get on the roof, pull back materials where necessary, and verify that the metals being used are compatible and that corrosion hasn't started. Because if it has started, catching it early means replacing a few fasteners or a section of flashing. Catching it late means replacing sections of decking, rafters, and insulation, and dealing with potential mold on top of it. If you're watching this and thinking, wait, I just had my roof done, or I had a repair last year, and you have a suspicion about whether the contractor used compatible metals, here's what I'd recommend. Call someone who specializes in roof inspections and ask them specifically to check for material compatibility, not just a visual inspection. You want them to identify the types of metals being used and confirm that they're compatible. And if you're in the New Jersey area and you want my team to take a look, you can reach out through the link in the description. We do comprehensive roof assessments, and part of that includes checking fasteners, flashing, and material pairings to make sure your system is built to last. Why coastal and high moisture environments accelerate corrosion. According to the National Association of Corrosion Engineers, corrosion rates in coastal environments can be 10 to 100 times faster than inland environments due to the presence of chloride ions in the air. These ions increase the conductivity of moisture on metal surfaces, dramatically accelerating galvanic reactions between incompatible metals. If you live in Monmouth County, Ocean County, or anywhere near the shore, you're in a high-risk zone. The salt in the air doesn't just corrode metals on its own. It also makes electrolysis corrosion happen faster. Here's why. Salt increases the conductivity of water. So when rainwater or even just humid air lands on your roof, if there's salt in it, that water becomes a much more effective electrolyte, which means the chemical reaction between incompatible metals happens faster and more aggressively. I've seen roofs fail in 5 years near the coast that would have taken 15 or 20 years inland. The chemistry is the same, but the speed is completely different. This is also true in areas with heavy rainfall or high humidity. The more moisture, the more opportunity for corrosion. And in New Jersey, we get plenty of both. If you're in one of these environments, material selection becomes even more critical. You can't just use standard fasteners or flashing. You need to use marine-grade stainless steel, properly coated metals, or isolation barriers between dissimilar metals. And if you've had a roof installed or repaired in the last few years and you're near the coast, you may want to have someone inspect it specifically for material compatibility. Because if there is a mismatch, the clock is already ticking. And in coastal environments, it's ticking fast. If you're within 10 miles of the ocean, or if your property is in a high humidity microclimate, near water, in a valley, surrounded by trees, you need to treat your roof like a marine application. That means stricter standards for material selection and more frequent inspections to catch corrosion before it becomes structural. And when you're getting quotes, ask contractors if they have experience with coastal installations, because the stakes are higher, the timeline is shorter, and the margin for error is smaller. How to prevent electrolysis corrosion: material selection, isolation, and proper installation. Preventing electrolysis corrosion comes down to 3 things. material selection, isolation, and proper installation. First, material selection. This means using compatible metals throughout the entire system. If you're using galvanized steel panels, use galvanized steel fasteners. If you're using aluminum flashing, use aluminum or stainless steel screws that are compatible with aluminum. Don't mix copper with steel. Don't mix zinc with iron. Keep everything in the same family. Second, isolation. If you absolutely must use dissimilar metals, say you've got copper gutters and an aluminum roof, you need to isolate them. This means using rubber washers, plastic spacers, or coated fasteners to prevent direct metal-to-metal contact. You can also use dielectric tape or sealants designed specifically to prevent galvanic corrosion. Third, proper installation. Even if you've got the right materials and the right isolation, if the installation isn't done correctly, you can still end up with problems. Fasteners need to be driven to the right depth, not over-torqued, not under-torqued. Flashing needs to be properly lapped and sealed, and every penetration needs to be checked for material compatibility. And here's the reality. Most homeowners will never see this level of detail. They're not going to climb up on the roof and inspect every fastener. That's why it's so important to work with a contractor who understands material science and takes the time to do it right. Because once the roof is on, it's too late to fix these mistakes without tearing things apart. If you're in the process of getting a new roof or planning a major repair, here's what you need to do. 1. Get a written material spec sheet. This should list every metal component that's going on your roof. Panels, shingles, fasteners, flashing, trim, everything. And confirm that they're compatible. 2. Ask your contractor how they're handling isolation between dissimilar metals. If they're using copper gutters with a steel roof, for example, what's the isolation method? If they don't have one, that's a problem. 3. Make sure the contract includes a post-installation material compatibility inspection. This means someone, either the contractor or a third-party inspector, verifies that the correct materials were used and that no incompatible metals are in contact. This might sound like overkill, but this is how you protect a $20,000 investment. You're not just paying for labor and materials. You're paying for a system that's going to keep water out of your home for the next 3 decades. And if that system is chemically unstable, you're not getting what you paid for. So just to recap, electrolysis corrosion happens when incompatible metals are used together on a roof and come into contact with moisture. Rainwater acts as an electrolyte, triggering a chemical reaction that causes one metal to corrode faster than it normally would. This is especially dangerous because it happens out of sight, beneath shingles, under flashing, inside fastener holes, and by the time you notice a problem, the damage is often extensive. Poor repairs, upgrades, and even well-intentioned fixes can introduce incompatible metals and start the corrosion process. And if you're in a coastal or high moisture environment, it happens even faster. The good news is, this is completely preventable with proper material selection, isolation techniques, and professional installation. But here's the thing. Most homeowners don't know what questions to ask when they hire a roofer. They don't know how to vet a contractor to make sure they're not going to make these kinds of mistakes. Now that you understand what electrolysis corrosion is and why it's so destructive, you need to know how to protect yourself when hiring a roofing contractor. In my next video, I'm going to walk you through the exact questions you should ask before signing any contract. Questions that will immediately tell you whether a roofer knows what they're doing or if they're going to cut corners. If you don't want to get stuck with a roof that looks good for 2 years and falls apart by year 5, you need to watch that video. I'll see you there.